Welcome students. Religion is one of the social phenomena which is challenging to define. Different social scientists define it in different ways. In human civilization, religion is a universal and pervasive institution mainly based on the belief system. It is a structured collection of ideas and practices found in all cultural systems and values. It is a nexus of spirituality and occasionally to moral principles and humanity. Religion is an integral part of a society. There were several religious forms and practices found in human civilization. The components like the belief system, rituals, ethics, sacredness, etc. are part and parcel of religion. In India, several religious practices are followed. In India, we can see two types of religion. The first one is the religions that have a local origin, where the other religions are which were being introduced by the outsiders. We can see Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism among the local origin religions. The second type we have Islam, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, etc. However, we can classify it as the religions found in India or having continuous interaction and cannot exist in isolation. While discussing Indian society, we cannot understand it without the religion and particularly Hinduism. In this week's class, Hinduism is our core focus, and in today's class, we will deal with Hinduism and its social order. This module will address the following: what is social order? Hinduism, the study of Hinduism, Hindu social order, theological ideas of Hinduism and Sanskrit deities. Social order. Social order is a term commonly used in society to refer to stability and consensus. In sociological understanding, it is a fundamental concept that includes various concepts working together to maintain the society's status quo. The components involved in social order are social structure and institutions, social relations, social interactions and behavior, cultural features, etc. Every society will have its own specific social order. Indian society in this regard with reference to religion has its own social order. India as a nation though has various religions, the religion of the land and which is followed by many is Hinduism. Hinduism as a term is understood differently in different contexts. Hinduism, Weber in his work The Religion of India, is explained as a term which is a coinage rather than a religion, where Britishers during their colonial rule for the official purpose collectively addressed the Indians as Hindus in terms of religious category. Another explanation from Ramanuja stated that the meaning of Hinduism was indigenously derived from the Vedas, Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, etc. The term's meaning was then reinterpreted by Brahmin teachers, that is Acharyas, and provided the practices and beliefs. This is the guiding principle for the way of life of a Hindu individual. During this period, the practices like sati, human sacrifices, devadasi, child marriage, etc. were performed. Later, the reform movements started eradicating such evil practices and were successful to a certain extent. In recent years, Hinduism as a movement has to be largely galvanized for political ends. If historically traced, propositions were stating Hinduism originated with Arabs who referred to people living beyond the Indus River as Hindu. Despite disagreements over whether Hinduism is a religion or not, Indian sociologist Madan argues that it is vital to recognize that Hinduism is unquestionably a cultural tradition and a way of life that encourages sociological research. Another argument about Hinduism was from Gail Omvedt, where he stated that Hinduism had been a taken for granted concept. Hindus are peoples of India and Hinduism is their religion. From the Rig Veda through the philosophers and even modern political leaders, it has been viewed as an exclusive phenomenon of spirituality connected to practical life with a robust geographical foundation in a diverse subcontinent. Thus, Hindus live all around the world, the majority of them concentrated in India and Pakistan. Now we can see the Hindu religion and its forms as given by Alex Michaels. According to Alex Michaels, Hinduism consists of 3 religions and 4 Hindu religiosities. He classified Hindu religion as follows. First one is Brahminic Sanskritic Hinduism. It is a polytheistic, ritualistic, priestly religion that has spread over almost all the South Asia. This form of religion is predominant in all discourses for the reason it has the acknowledged text, that is Veda, and has a holy language, that is Sanskrit, and its membership is also validated and it will be having priesthood. The components usually expected from religion by definition, and another reason for this being central is it assimilates non-Brahmin population also in many regions of India to strive to be the member of this form. The second form that is explained by him is folk religion and religion of social communities. It is also known as Hindu folk or tribal religions. This form of religion is also polytheistic and at times animistic. This form is represented and accentuated by the local community and caste groups that have caste inclusive celebrations or forms of worship with countless oral texts, that too in the local language. Kula Devata and Grama Devata are examples for this, where there will be their own priests and regional deities. The myths of this religious form are linked with the place of worship, their own pantheon. Spirits and the sanctified superheroes are part of this, and usually the first form of religion views this form of religion as impure. The third type is founded religion. This type of religion will include anti-Brahminic, occasionally preaching ascetic traits, and will have monastic communities and a core body of founders' teachings. Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism were examples of this founded religion, and these religions had withdrawn from the authority of Veda. For their identity, they shaped their own canon and mold themselves as a separate discipline. In terms of religiosity of Hinduism, it can be of 4 forms. They are ritualism, spiritualism, devotionalism and heroism. These forms of Hindu religiosities were not the same throughout the country. Specifically, the first 3 are considered the classical paths, that is Marga, and can be founded in the Brahminic Sanskritic version. Hindu religion, based on geographical spread, theistic orientation, form of tradition or their historical emergence, can be classified in many different ways, because as we are referring from the beginning onwards, the Hindu religion does not have a single common characteristics. Now we can see how Hinduism can be studied. Studying a religion from a social context is a specialization of sociology. Since the 19th century, study of Hinduism was initiated. Srinivas and A.M. Shah, in their work on Hinduism in the Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, had given why Hinduism is to be studied differently. According to them, Hinduism's principles differ from religions like Christianity and Islam. Neither the embodiment of Hinduism is a single sacred book, nor does Hinduism have a single founder. Being a polytheistic belief, there are innumerable gods, and to be a Hindu, an individual does not need to believe in the existence of God. In such a way, there were several contradictions in Hinduism. Beliefs which are fundamental for one Hindu group have been rejected by another group or the other. In studying any religion, it is important to comprehend how the theological and widespread levels of the faith interact. While trying to get into the theological levels of Hinduism, we will come across many sacred literatures. These literatures include Vedas, Brahmans, Upanishads, Vedagriyas, Dharmashastras, Nibandhas, Puranas, Idihasas, Darshanas, Agamas and Tantras. These works in Hindu theology provide instructions related to the way of life and standards of conduct for everyday life. These texts also order or commend the Hindus for sacrifices and other holy rites in temples and households which are based on mythology. These works contain complex and abstract ideologies. Both Indians and foreign scholars initially studied Hinduism, but their concern was mainly based on these literatures. During colonial rule, the missionaries, travelers, and administrators, to better understand the Indian social structure, studied the Hindu religion with specific concern on the actual description of the Hindu institutions, rites, and beliefs. According to Srinivas and Shah, until recently, bibliocentric was followed to recognize the Hindu religion. A more rounded view of Hinduism and the relation between the text and the actual behavior are to be given importance. Hindu religion in the social context lacks source materials for the study of the popular Hinduism. The literary Hinduism, which is available in vast amount, did not have data like the date, origin, and authorship of the text for reconstructing the social context. Even if the student attempts to study Hinduism, he or she will face problems in consolidating Indian society because the reconstruction of Indian society was systematically done only after the arrival of Britishers to India. The interaction between the philosophical and literary levels was given importance initially. In contrast, the popular levels, that is, to do with the actual institutions, rites, and beliefs, were neglected while studying Hinduism. This was highlighted by the authors concerning the study of Hinduism as the reinterpretation of Hinduism needs something else. Now we can see the social order of Hinduism. We have seen the social order and the backdrop of Hinduism and how it differs from other religions. As we know, Hinduism lacks centralized institutions like churches and mosques. It is so complexly intertwined that the beginning and the end are not easily approached. There is a confrontation or ambiguity in Hinduism. For instance, regarding caste, the theological reference from Rig Veda stated the 4 Varnas social order. The order goes like this: the Brahman at the top, usually the priests and the scholars, next the Kshatriyas who are warriors, political rulers and soldiers, Vaishyas who perform the trade and mercantile activities and who are the commoners, and the last of the Varnashrama Dharma are Shudras who belong to peasants, laborers and the servant communities. It is believed that the 4 Varna order emerged respectively from the mouth, arms, thighs and feet of a primeval man who is a victim of divine sacrifice. Interestingly, there was no mention of the communities that did not come under this category, that is the untouchables, in the Vedic reference. As we all know, there were innumerable caste groups called Jadis in the Indian subcontinent which come under the Hindu social order, but the sacred text of Hinduism explains caste in the context of Varna and misses the views on Jadi. Though the literature discussed less regarding caste or Jadi, Weber mentioned that caste, that is, the ritual rites and duties it gives and imposes, and the position of Brahmans is the fundamental institution of Hinduism. Before everything else, without caste, there is no Hindu. Another primary component of Hindu social structure is purity and pollution. Srinivas and Shah mentioned that the strictness of this rule was different for different castes and communities. Here it is noteworthy that there were differences, but all the communities, irrespective of their strata, followed this principle with variation in the degree. The view of pollution is associated mainly with intercaste relationship, and caste endogamy was an everyday occurrence. Apart from the rule of marriage, other restrictions were also followed in terms of purity and pollution, like acceptance of food and drink, touching and going near a member of another caste, etc. It is believed that if the upper caste person fails to observe the rules and restrictions and gets polluted, for his violation, to restore his purity, one has to perform the purificatory rite, and the level of the rite will be decided based on the seriousness of the violation. We have seen the 2 orders of Hindu religion with regard to caste, but Hindu religion in the Indian context is not only based on these aspects alone. The cult groups of village community are another feature of the social order. We have this village deities, mainly the female goddesses, are found in almost all rural areas. These deities are associated with the day-to-day acts of the people, like praying to God to keep away from seasonal diseases, drought, famine and floods, and taking care of the village and villagers. The rituals and practices of this belief system are different and they are elaborate. It includes birth, wedding to funeral rites, and they perform yearly festivals and vratas for specific reasons, like for getting a male child. This aspect of the social order takes away the energy, time and money of the people. With this explanation, Srinivas and Shah highlighted the need for demarcation between those religious aspects affected by caste and which are not affected by caste. They stated that this is a vital area for research. Now we can move on to the theological ideas of Hinduism. Though Hinduism, as mentioned earlier, does not have any defined doctrine, we cannot deny the available theological ideas which may be considered fundamental. According to Shah and Srinivas, within the religion, many sects have varied viewpoints on doctrinal issues. One such standpoint is that Hindu philosophical thinking had its basis in the Upanishads, and the characteristics of Brahman, the universal soul, and how it relates to Atman, the individual soul, have been critical issue. One perspective focuses exclusively on this contradiction, denies the existence of God and regards Brahman as absolute and lacking in attributes. There was the Charvaka view where they denied any claims of supernatural existence, all religious doctrine and authority, the use of witness and inference to determine the truth, as well as any ritual or tradition. However, the majority of other viewpoints acknowledge the presence of God and take into account the matter of his relationship with Brahman and Atman respectively. It is believed that Atman is imperishable and that it undergoes an everlasting migration or cycle of incarnations. Any incarnation, whether a person, an animal or a superhuman, is shaped by karma, the net sum of one's good or bad deeds in previous lives. With reference to dharma, goodness or badness is determined. According to Hindu philosophy, as given by Ramanuja, outlined in his book on Indian social structure, man is made up entirely of wishes and desires, what is called as karma. A man is tied to this world and subject to birth and death by his desire. The connection between wants and rebirth is thus only made through karma, that is his deed. Consequently, a mortal becomes eternal and achieves salvation, that is moksha, by letting go of their ambitions. The Hindu philosophy also adhered to specific theological idea like papa, punya, dharma, etc. Basic tenets of Hinduism. In the opinion of Yogendra Singh, the normative principles of Hinduism are based on beliefs, ideals and logic of permissiveness, that is permission that shall be done. Liberalism, generous and free views, opinions and principles. Then being and becoming, creation and destruction, hedonism, the belief that pleasure is the chief goal. Then he talk about utilitarianism and spiritual transcendence, outside the range of human experience, reason and description, etc. Basically, Hinduism is based on the following tenets. First one is theological ideas, purity and pollution, then hierarchy, which might have been discussed in the caste and caste structures. The fourth one is idol worship. It is a common feature of the Hindu religion. It is to be noted that the idol worshipped is not uniform and it varies on the basis of the sects. Then the characteristic of monolithic. A monolithic culture is a civilization that completely revolves around a single concept or activity. For example, a monolithic society is rigid and homogeneous and not open to new ideas. Then it is known for its tolerance. Hinduism is based on the liberal ideology and accepts a variety of cults and sects within its fold, as long as they all owe commitment to the same Hindu deities. Then segregation is also a component of Hinduism in terms of social interactions, worship and religious beliefs. Hinduism promotes the division of society into social communities. Then non-violence is also a characteristic of Hinduism. The caste system is closely tied to many theological concepts in the Hindu faith, such as karma, dharma and moksha. According to the Hindu Dharma Sutra, a person's good and bad deeds are linked with his rebirth in the high caste and in the low caste or as an animal respectively. As a result, caste responsibilities are associated with dharma, and a person's birth into a particular caste can be used as a measuring rod of their spiritual development. Moksha is one of the most expected attainments of each and every individual in Hinduism. Moksha can be attained primarily through knowledge, good deeds, love and devotion to God. In general, the path of knowledge for an individual calls for relinquishing the world, including caste and family, and leading to ascetic life to attain moksha. The Bhagavad Gita was the text that initially stressed the path of deeds and devotion. This liberation or freedom was accessible to all man in the world, irrespective of caste and gender. The popular and much accepted form of devotion is the worship of one's chosen God based on their tradition. As a religious text, Bhagavad Gita has been interpreted and reinterpreted by many, including Indian political leaders like Gandhi and Tilak. They emphasized that the essence of devoted life is found in altruistic action. To understand the fundamentals of theological principles, the myths and stories told in regional languages have helped the common people. Still, the research subject must determine and include how important that these theological concepts were and have they firmly related to the regional and sectional ideas and attitudes. Now we can see Sanskrit deities. Sanskrit deities are those whose characteristics and practices of worship are detailed in mythological, liturgical and other works. Nature and nature related aspects are the basis for many of the deities, whether they are major or minor. For example, Indra is a well-known sky god. Agni is the fire god. Varuna is the god of water. Surya is the sun god, and so on. These gods form the category of minor gods, whereas beginning as a minor character, just a sun god's aspect, Vishnu later rose to become a high god. Likewise, Vedic god of thunder, Rudra, and later emerged as the dominant god Shiva. Thus, the chief Vedic gods are transmuted into the trinity of Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the protector, and Shiva, the destroyer. The creator Brahma was not mentioned in the Vedic text, and the Brahmins introduced him during their interpretation, but in due course of time he lost his significance, and the two popular sects in Hinduism with two important gods, Vishnu and Shiva, emerged. Deity and their incarnation can be seen throughout history with mythical references in Hinduism. Vishnu, as per the Hindu texts, has his popular Dasavataras, Matshaya, which is fish, Kurma, turtle or tortoise, Varaha, boar, Narasimha, man and lion together, Vamana, dwarf god, Parasurama, Brahman warrior, Rama, Balarama, Krishna and Kalki. The notion behind the many manifestations in that God periodically permits himself to reborn on earth to vanquish evil and establish righteousness. Like Vishnu, Shiva does not have several incarnations, but he too has numerous names to refer to him. Wife of chief gods, particularly the Vedic gods, is also worshipped along with their husbands. Another form of worship is the Shakti cult, where a female god is worshipped independently in association with a male deity. Usually in Shakti cult, the association was with Shiva rather than Vishnu. Other well-known deities are Hanuman, the leader of Rama's army of monkeys, Skanda and Ganesha, sons of Shiva. Vagnas are vehicles or the birds and animals that serve as God's mounts. Objects of worship still include sun, moon, stars, fire, mountains, lakes, creatures, snakes, trees and plants. The gods of rivers are frequently anthropomorphized. For instance, the river Ganges is a classic example and is associated with the goddess of Parvati. The composite god Harihara represents the merger of Shiva and Vishnu, whereas Ardhanarishwara signifies an attempt to reflect the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. Hindu mythology and ritual emphasize the henotheistic trend in which the worshipped deity is glorious above all others. Despite the prevalence of pantheism, all deities from Vishnu or Shiva to the most basic village deity are considered expressions of the same deity. These principles have allowed Hinduism to integrate regional cult and deities and even accept the reliability of all other religions. Temple is a place of worship that is given importance in Hinduism. A Hindu temple represents the henotheistic principle. The temple will have one primary deity and the temple derives the name and images from that deity, whether it is a minor or major deity. It is also to be noted that some Hindu gods are not related to temples and a few gods are invoked mostly during sacrifices like Varuna and Agni. Even while discussing temples, we can see varied views in Hindu religion which makes the religion unique and different from other monotheistic religion. To sum up, in this model, we have seen what Hinduism is, how it differs from other religions. We also discussed the popular forms of Hindu religion and its religiosity. The study of Hinduism and the subject matter to be addressed while studying Hinduism are also dealt with in accordance with the views of M.N. Srinivas and A.M. Shah. This model also covers the Hindu social order and its related topics. We also discussed Hindu theological concepts like karma, moksha and dharma. Further, the Sanskrit deities, the significance of various gods in Hinduism and their personification were also deliberated. And the aspects of religion like place of worship and its relevance also focused on this model. Thank you.